Kia ora koutou, I am Damien Woolfall-Muşdal, owner of Ride Cloud9 motorcycle training and licensing in Auckland. As a professional riding coach, I am a passionate advocate for road safety, and particularly so for vulnerable road users such as motorcyclists. So let us imagine the open road and that feeling of the wind bristling past on a motorcycle. It is an iconic image. However, sometimes freedom comes with heightened risks, especially when our skills do not quite keep pace with our ambition. Today, we are delving into a critical issue in national road safety, and specifically for motorcyclists in New Zealand, and it is an area we often overlook. Whilst our media reports on road safety generally, and especially during the busy holiday periods, this presentation focuses on a particular persistent problem, and that is why so many motorcyclists, after completing their initial training, stop improving their skills, which over time leads to what we call skill stagnation. In the context of motorcycle road safety, skill stagnation refers to a halt in rider development that directly increases preventable risks. Skill stagnation is a condition in which a rider's skill set ceases to evolve or improve due to factors such as a lack of challenge, training opportunities, and individuals' knowledge or their ability having become outdated. Our goal is then to go beyond abstract statistics published in road safety reports to understand the human psychology associated with the skill stagnation among motorcyclists, why it is so essential to address it, and how one innovative system aims to tackle it head-on. Today, I will draw on insights from a conceptual paper to propose the Rider Awareness and Skill Progression System, or the RASP system. This is not just about making roads safer. Fundamentally, it's about motivating each of us to improve continuously. So let us now turn to posing a research question before laying out the problem itself and exploring what the data tells us about motorcyclists in New Zealand and why this situation is so profoundly problematic. The two research questions in this study are as follows. Firstly, to what extent does self-efficacy play a role in addressing skill stagnation and crash risk among New Zealand motorcyclists? Secondly, how can a critical evaluation framework capture the effectiveness of self-efficacy in addressing skill stagnation and crash risk among New Zealand motorcyclists? In this presentation, I will outline the problematic situation in the context of the broader motorcycle road safety system before discussing the phases underpinning the concept development of the RASP system. I will then integrate the system's conceptual framework into a practical evaluation tool for rider skill learning and development. In closing, I will elaborate on the framework's contributions, examine its implications, and highlight its limitations before sharing my final reflections. The motorcycle road safety numbers are indeed stark, highlighting why this is a critical issue to address. Motorcyclists represent just 4% of all road users nationally and are a relatively small slice of the traffic pie. However, despite their small representation, they account for a disproportionately larger 18% of all annual national road fatalities. So this is not a minor concern, but a significant contributor to national road trauma, making it a pivotal area for intervention. Another way of looking at this issue is that 1/20th of road users are involved in nearly 1/5 of fatalities, which signals a profound problem. Furthermore, according to NZ police crash investigators, 70% of motorcycle fatalities are due to rider error, the majority of which are caused by poor observation and hazard identification. This finding clearly emphasizes the vital role that rider skills play in improving road safety outcomes for motorcyclists. Examining this issue further, while New Zealand's licensing system is designed to encourage riders to get that initial experience and develop basic competencies for riding on the road, the basic training that accompanies learner licensing does not guarantee lifelong skill acquisition, and that is the crux of the problem. Most motorcyclists, after obtaining their initial training to obtain a learner's license, do not attend formal skills training again, which leads directly to a decline in their riding skills over time and predictably an increased risk of crashing. This situation directly contributes to that disproportionate fatality rate, and it reminds me of an analogy of a gym membership that you get in January with great intentions to get healthier. You do the gym induction, but then life gets busy, and suddenly it is December and you have not been back. However, skill stagnation for motorcyclists is a much higher stakes version of that, because in this context we can quantify this gap. Despite there being over 462,000 registered motorcycle license holders across the country and over 214,000 road registered motorcycles actively in use, the ACC National Ride Forever program consistently faces a shortfall in attendance. This nationwide training program subsidizes courses for ongoing training with an annual ACC target of 10,000 riders. However, since the program's launch in November 2012, it has consistently missed its yearly targets, clearly indicating a significant systemic gap between the need for ongoing training and actual participation by riders. According to ACC estimates, 45,000 participants, comprising 25,000 riders, have attended the Ride Forever courses since the program's inception. A lack of engagement in training directly fuels the skill stagnation that makes the roads more hazardous for motorcyclists. We have a motorcycle licensing system with low entry barriers that gets riders started and gets them licensed, but then a massive percentage of riders just are not engaging in the continuous learning needed to stay safe. The existing system is clearly not fostering that lifelong skill development. And this brings us to a crucial point. We cannot view the stagnation in rider skills as just an isolated issue affecting individuals, but it is part of a larger complex motorcycle road safety system. All the elements are interrelated according to system dynamics, a field which studies how interconnected parts of a system influence each other over time in feedback loops. A negative change in one area, like declining engagement in ongoing training, can ripple through and significantly worsen other parts of the system. The tragic consequence, as the statistics show, is a persistent increase in fatalities and serious injuries. So tackling this is not just about the rider, it's about the health of the entire system. And that is why addressing this problematic situation, skill stagnation, is not just about individual riders, but about the health of the entire national road safety system. So with this clear understanding of the problem, this widespread skill stagnation and its tragic outcomes, how does the RASP system address it? How does it propose to change things to break this cycle? The RASP system is designed as an evidence-based self-assessment tool to address the problem of rider skill stagnation. It aims to influence the motivations of motorcyclists proactively by pivoting on the idea of empowering riders to understand their own riding rather than just receiving top-down instruction. Furthermore, its core purpose is to foster continuous rider skill development. So instead of simply pushing more training courses at people, as has been the case in nationally coordinated efforts by government agencies to date, it reframes the rider's learning and skill development, placing ownership on the rider. Using a systems thinking methodology, the RASP system generates a positive reinforcing feedback loop. Broadly, the idea is that every component within a RASP system reinforces the others. This leads to a sustained increase in rider engagement and, crucially, their progression in a skill development, even if it's a small win. These little wins directly reinforce the rider's motivation for further learning and create self-sustaining momentum, where improving competence fuels the desire for more improvement, moving away from problematic skill stagnation. This shift involves moving riders from what psychologists refer to as System 1 thinking. System 1 is the automatic pilot mode. It's like tying your shoes, habitual, quick, and requires little conscious thought. The RASP system encourages riders to adopt a more intentional approach akin to System 2 thinking. Like solving a puzzle, you must think it through. The RASP system enables riders to think actively about their riding rather than react, especially when it really matters out on the road. The RASP system also shifts learning from structuring tasks to scaffolding. In other words, structuring is like giving someone a detailed instruction manual with clear step-by-step instructions. At the same time, scaffolding involves providing them with the tools and support to figure out the following steps on their own. It encourages ownership by building on what they know and helps riders identify their own learning path, empowering the rider to be their own guide and assisted by the system. This approach aims to create a virtuous cycle of learning that begins with self-assessment, generating honest insights and leading to targeted interventions. These interventions lead to measurable improvement and the payoff enhanced self-efficacy, meaning a stronger, more realistic belief in a rider's own ability to ride safely and skillfully. Whilst confidence is based on their actual improvement, this approach raises some critical questions, such as which groups will be most impacted by this systemic approach to motorcycle road safety. So stepping back a bit, why does the RASP system matter more generally beyond just the individual rider getting feedback? There is a significant impact on three main groups. Firstly, for riders, it is empowering, and a clear path provides more confidence based on developing real skill. Secondly, for training providers, it represents a potential shift away from generic one-size-fits-all courses, allowing them to offer more specific modules, targeted courses addressing the particular needs identified by the RASP system, assessments making them more efficient and potentially more effective. And thirdly, policymakers, those individuals who are concerned about national statistics. For them, the RASP system offers a novel framework. It is evidence-based and addresses the motivational aspect, encouraging riders to strive for continuous improvement. That could have a significant impact on national road safety statistics, including injuries and fatalities. So, in examining its potential across the board, let us now delve a little deeper into the conceptual framework itself. Firstly, goal-setting theory, GST, originates from organizational psychology, which shows that clear, challenging goals, especially when combined with feedback, significantly boost motivation. The RASP system harnesses this by helping riders turn those vague, I want to be safer goals into specific achievable steps based on their personalized assessment results. So instead of ride safer, it might be reduce missed blind spot checks by 100% per ride over the next 6 months. We all perform better when we know exactly what we're aiming for and how to measure it. The second theory is self-determination theory. SDT reminds us that three core psychological needs fundamentally drive people: feeling in control, which is autonomy, feeling capable and skilled, which is competence, and feeling connected to others, which is relatedness. The RASP system taps into these three basic human needs to keep riders engaged in their own learning journey. It gives them choices, fosters that sense of mastery. So it is not just about being told what to do, it is about feeling empowered and skilled yourself. Third, there is the social cognitive theory. SCT highlights that our behavior is shaped by this dynamic interplay between our thoughts and our behaviors, and a massive part of this is self-efficacy, which is our belief in our own ability to perform a task successfully. So the extent to which a rider believes they can improve their cornering, for instance, is such that they will apply more effort and they will persist longer when it gets tough. The RASP system aims to foster this belief by providing tangible pathways to improvement. Now it is easier to see how self-efficacy can be a real game changer, especially for someone who might be intimidated by the idea of advanced training. Boosting their confidence could make all the difference. And finally, the fourth theory is the theory of planned behavior. TPB indicates that our intention to act is the strongest predictor of our behavior. Our intention drives what we do, and that intention is influenced by three things: our attitude towards the behavior, whether it is good or bad, what significant others think we should do, which psychologists call subjective norms, and our belief in our ability to overcome barriers like cost or time, or referred to as perceived behavioral control. The RASP system aims to positively influence all of these factors: attitudes, subjective norms, perceived behavioral controls, and self-efficacy, and shift riders towards safer habits and stronger intentions to keep learning. So, how does the RASP system translate these complex ideas into practical applications? How does it move beyond abstract concepts into real-world behavioral change? This process begins with a Motorcycle Rider Behavior Questionnaire, or MRBQ. Developed in 2007, this questionnaire is a validated survey instrument used to evaluate riders' risky behaviors in multiple studies. The MRBQ uses 43 items with 6-point Likert subscales that are categorized into 5 factors: control errors, traffic errors, speed violations, stunts, and protective safety gear usage. Fundamentally, the MRBQ is a self-assessment tool that measures riding behavioral variables across various subscales. Previous MRBQ studies have typically used the questionnaire to evaluate the statistical strength of relationships between the 5 behavioral risk factors and latent constructs. In contrast, this paper is the first to propose integrating self-reported data from survey participants with targeted interventions to shape practical learning and development for riders. Next, I will discuss how data collected from the rider's MRBQ is used to generate a personalized rider development report and identify targeted action-oriented interventions. The RASP system focuses on analyzing MRBQ to diagnose behavioral risk factors, helping riders identify targeted and action-oriented skill development interventions. The purpose of this system is not merely to label riders as risky or safe based on their scores. Instead, it provides a detailed breakdown and classification of specific behaviors without being judgmental. As a diagnostic tool, the RASP system utilizes the MRBQ's 43 scaled items to measure 5 key behavioral risk factors, offering a comprehensive view of riding habits through a personalized rider report. There are traffic errors such as cutting corners and not signaling properly, then control errors such as skidding and poor braking technique, then speed violations involving riding at excessive speed. Moreover, stunting, such as wheelies, often portrays risky showboating, and finally, the usage of safety equipment. In other words, wearing the right gear is crucial. We will now walk through how the RASP system works in practice step by step. First, the rider completes their MRBQ self-assessment online, answering the 43 questions about their riding habits by selecting an option on a 6-point Likert scale. After completing the MRBQ, the rider receives a detailed personalized report, and this report breaks down their tendencies and self-reported behaviors across 5 key subscales. The goal is to provide specific actionable insights tailored to each rider, avoiding labels that classify them as high risk or low risk. For example, suppose a rider scores low on speed violations and does not tend to speed excessively, but scores high on traffic errors. In that case, the report helps them understand that their main risk is not speeding, but relatively poor hazard perception or misjudging other vehicles. In this case, they may struggle with pulling out in front of traffic they did not see properly. This feedback pinpoints a specific type of risk they face. Conversely, imagine a rider who scores high on stunts such as wheelies and stoppies, but scores low on the usage of safety equipment. Their report would make it clear that their primary risk stems from overconfidence, compounded by a lack of awareness regarding the benefits of protective gear. This level of detail makes the feedback incredibly valuable for addressing the specific areas of their skill development. This personalized feedback becomes part of their skill development roadmap. It helps riders not only understand that they have areas to improve, but also specifies what those areas are and why they matter for their safety. In the next step, the report links their specific weaknesses to targeted interventions. For instance, if a rider scores poorly on speed violations, the report could recommend that they take an attitude and roadcraft development course, providing direct, actionable feedback tailored to the rider. Now, this is where goal-setting theory comes into play. The MRBQ results are used to set SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For example, a rider with a high score on the traffic error subscale might set a measurable goal of reducing missed blind spot checks by 100% per ride over the next 6 months. They could achieve this by specifically practicing turning maneuvers in a controlled environment under observation first and then on quiet roads. This approach transforms a vague desire to improve into a concrete actionable plan. Furthermore, instead of being sent on a generic course that covers skills they have already mastered or overlooks their specific weaknesses, the report directly links their risky behaviors to targeted training interventions that address their specific needs. This strategy aligns with self-determination theory, particularly the need for autonomy to feel in control of one's own learning journey. The personalized report gives the rider autonomy over their development, allowing them to prioritize the risky behaviors they want to focus on first. It avoids a one-size-fits-all approach, which often fails. As a result, different riders receive different recommendations. For instance, a rider with high control errors, such as running wide in corners, may struggle with slow speed control and would be encouraged to take a course specifically focused on cornering techniques, braking, or slow speed maneuvers. In contrast, another rider who scores highly on speed violations would require a tutorial that emphasizes rider attitudes, the psychology of risk-taking, and exploring why they feel compelled to speed. This personalized approach meets riders where their needs truly are, making the solutions more relevant and impactful. Finally, the fourth step involves the rider practicing the interventions by taking a course, honing their skills, and repeating the MRBQ assessment every 6 months. This raises the question, how does the RASP system ensure this is not a one-off assessment, and how does it foster a virtuous cycle of continuous learning and prevent skill stagnation? The MRBQ is designed to be completed every 6 months. After undertaking targeted training interventions based on their initial report, riders complete a follow-up assessment, and this provides a tangible metric for success, showing whether their scores on specific subscales have improved. Seeing proof of improvement is incredibly motivating, as it demonstrates that their efforts have paid off. This concrete evidence reinforces the desire to continue learning, creating a direct feedback loop that keeps the virtuous cycle spinning and actively combats stagnation. So what does this mean for a rider's self-belief, self-efficacy, and ability to sustain safer habits? Does it truly change their internal compass? The purpose of this critical evaluation framework is to assess how effectively the RASP system reduces skill stagnation and crash risk amongst motorcyclists in New Zealand. Initially, the RASP system is a proof-of-concept pilot with a small group of Ride Cloud9 customers. The broader aim is to undertake a phased rollout to a larger group of the company's customers, then other training schools, and finally policymakers over the next 2 to 3 years. The evaluation utilizes rider data collected from the MRBQ, personalized assessment reports, targeted interventions, follow-up course participation, and reassessments. This process aims to evaluate the effectiveness of the RASP system on rider skills as well as its impact on empowerment and reliability scores during reassessment, which takes place every 6 months, following each MRBQ assessment and training intervention. The results of the riders' critical evaluations, in conjunction with their MRBQ responses, personalized assessment reports, and training interventions, are then compiled into a learning and development record for each rider. So with this in mind, let's now take a look at the overall contributions, implications, limitations, and directions for future research. Skill stagnation is a significant factor that is associated with serious injuries and fatalities to motorcyclists in New Zealand. The RASP systems focus on rider self-assessment, targeted intervention, and personal ownership for their ongoing rider skills training is a departure from the current national government agency training program. The system's main contribution is in replacing a one-size-fits-all standardized training method with a highly personalized approach that draws from both rigorous psychological theories and data collection instrumentation. The implications for riders, instructors, and policymakers will gradually increase over time as the system scales. Initially, learning and development tools such as workflows, reports, and courses will need to be designed and piloted with small groups of riders. Once the proof of concept has been established, the focus will shift to training instructors nationwide on how to utilize the RASP system with their own customers. Once other motorcycle schools have achieved competency with the RASP system, Policymakers will then be approached and requested to consider amendments to the existing National Rider Training Program in favour of incorporating elements of the RASP system. When considering the limitations of the RASP system, a notable example is the reliability of self-reported data. People might not be totally honest or even accurately perceive their own behaviour. There can be social desirability bias exhibited as intentional underreporting of behaviours. Whilst that is always a challenge with self-assessment, checking its effectiveness using objective measures and monitoring can overcome an over-reliance on self-reports to assess if the RASP system is making an impact in reducing crashes or near misses in the real world. Future research that applies the RASP system could be replicated in regions throughout New Zealand and indeed other countries around the world. Additional studies potentially could determine not only different attitudes among riders to risky riding behaviours captured in the MRBQ, but also variations in rider attitudes towards ongoing rider skill development and evaluation captured in the RASP system evaluation. In conclusion, this has been a valuable opportunity to explore the RASP system. We have seen how this self-assessment tool addresses the critical gap in rider safety and genuinely attempts to shift the rider's mindset, moving from an automatic habitual system to a more conscious, deliberate system. It aims to move beyond just traditional training courses to create a genuine culture of continuous learning and improvement. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the RASP system really makes you think about how we approach learning any skill and not just riding. For instance, consider the virtuous cycle of honest self-assessment, targeted action, and tracking progress. So how could applying that kind of structured self-improvement help you in other areas of your life? Do you enjoy pursuing personal goals or professional development? And whether it's learning an instrument, improving your job, or enhancing your fitness, or whatever it is, the core principles of the RASP system of self-awareness, targeted effort, and measuring progress are universal. So I hope this dive into the RASP system gives you some valuable insights and a fresh perspective on continuous learning, whether you're on two wheels or facing other challenges. Thank you.